So it's such a thrill for me to be here on stage with the team of Delhi Crime 2. Uh, Over the 2 seasons of this show, many of us have started feeling like a part of your khaki family. Your trials seem like our tribulations and your successes feel like our triumphs. And this time, you've got an arch villain who's really worthy of your policing skill as well. So thank you to each one of you for making this amazing show. Thank you, Tanuj. I don't know where to look when talking to Tanuj. So, can you see us, Tanuj? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like some
Okay.
kind of overlord here.
Yeah. So, uh, um, so thank you very much for being here on stage with me as well, and Tanuj for joining us virtually. So I'll start off with the first question, which is that there have been any number of reviews of the show, many of them glowing, a few perhaps not so glowing, and a plethora of social media posts. But what, and this is a question which is to each one of you, what is that one comment or piece of feedback about Delhi Crime 2 that made all the months of hard work really worthwhile for you? Shefali.
Wha- um, One of the things that I read was it's a worthy successor. And I think it was crisp and it said everything about it. I got a message from a guy who had appeared for the IPS and had failed. And after he saw DC, he messaged me and said, I'm going to reappear for it, which I think was, yeah, I
That's
think
lovely.
it was amazing. And just, I think overall there's been so much love and respect and appreciation for it that lots of messages, but obviously I can't get into everything.
Thank you. How about you, Tillotama? I'm pronouncing your name the
Yes,
Bengali way.
yes, absolutely.
Tillotama.
Wonderful. It's wonderful. It usually becomes Tilly, Titoloma, Tillitoma.
Tilloma.
Yeah, many. Uh, um, I think one of the common messages that personally for me very moving was when people identified with Karishma's dreams and didn't just see her as a person who does horrible, commits a horrible crime. And so things like, uh, I love her, but I have to hate her. I'm so sorry, but I have to hate you, but I love you. Kind of psycho messages in my DM felt like, oh, what have we created here? But really, like the love for the show and season one, I'm a massive fan as well of season one, so it's just, yeah, wonderful.
Super. Tanya?
We should ask Tanuj. He's created it. Everyone's heard a lot from me.
Tanuj, what's the best comment that you read or heard? Could be from a friend as well. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I love that the performances are getting such praise because I think we worked very hard to get everybody kind of in sync. But more than that, the filmmaking, I think people are responding. They feel like we're in the same world as season one. The camera's moving the same way. David Boland's done an amazing job keeping our style alive, the production design, the music, kind of all the filmmaking elements that, people don't see all the behind the scenes tedious long hours we put into keeping the show, the craft alive. And people are responding to the craft of the show. And I feel very proud of that. I think that's a lot of years of work coming out in a moment. And the editors as well have really done a good job to keep the pace. And people are responding to the 5 episodes of it. I think people feel like either they want just a little bit more, or they felt like this was a good size. So all of that has been it makes me really happy.
Super. Now, Tanya.
Yeah, no, I'll say. I think what I loved was an early review saying, thank you, Delhi Crime, for saying it all. I thought that was really strong because of the number of things we talk about. I genuinely believe that a series is a success if it stays with you and it makes you talk about it. And I think there's a lot of conversation that's happening still about Delhi crime, despite we live in very crowded, entertainment environments. But the ability for a conversation to sustain, for a conversation around class or tribes to sustain in the positive, I think that's a testament to the content. It's odd saying it, but yes.
Sure.
To add to this, I think one of the first review that I read said that thanked Delhi Crime for not being tone deaf. And I think that was really, really important because you make something and a few years later when it comes out, it's aged really bad because the times have changed. People have gone through a tremendous sense of change in the last 2 years with the pandemic. Families have been, torn apart. And I think it's really important for a show to not be tone deaf. And I think that was such a big relief, Yeah.
Thanks. Shefali, the next question is for you. They say that good things come to those who wait, and perhaps season 1 represented that for you. But when you signed season 2, you had a tough act to follow, which was your own act in season 1. So how did you approach Vartika Chaturvedi differently in DC2 vis-a-vis DC1?
Like Tanuj said, and even Tanya was saying earlier, the soul of DC can't change. That's the grain of it. And these characters in DC1 got so much love. While I was going into DC2, I didn't want to change her, but everyone goes through various experiences and their reactions are different. So there is inevitable change. Of course, you don't want to become stagnant or predictable, but I think, so like you correctly said, when I did DC1, I had no clue that the show or Vartika were going to become unprecedented. And then when DC2 was happening, I was like, how do I step into those shoes again? I mean, it was really daunting for me. But there is something about stepping into those shoes. There really is. And recently someone told me that Vartika's in your DNA now. But, she's still, she bothers me in terms of, I don't know whether I could do this again. And I think that works for me as an actor. It's a great place to start when you don't know.
I watched Darlings, and right after that I watched DC2. So it was so amazing to see these two totally different Shefali Shahs in these two shows. So.
Thank you. I mean, that's actually what I aspire to do is become a different character.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And likewise, Tillotama, I watched Sir, and then I watched DC2. So again, that amazing contrast between the two performances. So that was great. So the next question is for you, Tanuj. That you've carried forward the legacy of an Emmy. I know you've heard this question a lot. You're carrying forward the legacy of an Emmy award-winning season 1. And given that in India, most web series face the curse of season 2, how did you look at this project? What were the pressures on you, and how did you go about making this season your own very special Delhi Crime?
Well, I was, in one sense, I was lucky because the Emmy didn't happen until we were very much immersed into season 2 and the pandemic had hit. So at that stage, we had already gone down our path and I had absorbed the show and internalized the language and, had already been pulling our characters forward. In terms of carrying forward to season 2, I see it as an opportunity. I see it as an amazing gift to inherit, an amazing legacy to bring forward. You have one of the best cast shows in India, and then we're bringing Tillotama Shome on. I mean, I'm not a filmmaker if I don't see this pool of talent and get inspired and apply my skills to advance the show. I mean, imagine if I didn't have these actors. Imagine if I didn't have this great world built. That's even scarier. That's even more likely to fail in my mind. So, I think where everybody else saw stress and pressure, I saw great opportunity, and I felt a great responsibility to keep this alive for Netflix and for India too, because this is a show that matters to people's hearts, and I hope that it can be an example of how more shows can push forward into a second season and a third and a fourth and a fifth. Why stop at just thinking in terms of 2? If I'm a fan of shows like The Wire that have gone on for seasons, and so you can apply those models to this kind of a vision. And so that's my thinking. I try to think bigger.
And you'd worked with Tillotama in the past, I think, on a couple of projects. So how was that like? Then you must have reached out to her for this. What was your thinking at that time?
Well, Tillotama is one of the most honest, reliable actors who always nail the emotional center of any character she plays in any moment. She requires very little, direction after she knows what she's kind of doing, and I just knew that she would make such a worthy adversary for someone like Shefali. For Shefali, you need a good villain, and you need a good actor to bring out the best of your hero. And it was just something that was a bug in my brain from the moment I got onto the project. It was something that just this last scene of the series is what drove the creative for much of the process, much of the writing process. And I was inspired by movies like Heat and other great kind of, even Batman and Joker. I just wanted a great acting challenge between the two of them at the end, and man, did they deliver.
Superb. So Shefali, the next question is for you. You're the one who's been on the journey of both the seasons. What is it about Madam Sir and her squad that have struck all the right chords? And if I may say so, I think it's changed the way many of us look at the police force in India. So I think that's amazing. And also, what are your thoughts on breaking the curse of season 2?
Breaking the curse of season 2, I owe a lot to this man out there. He really, he deserves a big round of applause. Good morning. And, well, what is it about Madam Sir? I don't really know. I think what happened with season 1, when the Nirbhaya case happened, as all of us, I was very affected. I mean, all of us personally were. And there was, of course, pain and there was anger, but there was a cry for justice. And this constant question of why is nobody doing anything about this? When I read the script, I realized that there was somebody doing something about this, and they cracked it in 5 days. They got the culprits, and strangely so, coming a full circle, it was a woman. So in season 1, she almost became a hero. This was a story that I was unaware of. I'm sure a lot of journalists would be aware of it, but I was, as a layman, unaware of it. And she became a hero. In season 2, she's human. She makes mistakes. She falters. She has flaws, but she has the grace to accept it and correct it. And I think it's a complete package. They become far more human. Also, they're real, they're honest, the entire team. You don't feel like you're watching an actor play a character. They've become their own identities. And which I think probably is what works so beautifully for the show. And I'm sure people love the original gang. Do you all? Okay. They need coffee. Just saying.
Please, cheer and shout out your answers. Thank you. So, something that I just remembered that you've said in the past is that when you were shooting for season 1, you would always ask what day and what time is it? Because you were trying to place which part of the thing that you were doing. So was there something equivalent like that for season 2?
Absolutely, because again, it's a story of a couple of days. Yeah. And it's a continuous process. Yeah. I don't think she ever went back home, except the first night. Right. So you have to, as an actor, I have to know the entire tracking of her time, minute to minute, whether you see her on screen or you don't see her on screen.
Right.
So I have to know what all has happened, what information has she got, what was the last conversation she had with someone. If it could be anger, let's say, or disappointment, for example, with Niti, for losing the culprits, what all has happened in between, have I gotten over it? And I'm ready to look at her in a much more normal light and say, okay, fine, let's solve this. You know, so there are a lot, it's a process. And that really also changed my way of working as an actor. It's been a learning process for me. So it's amazing, the in-between time.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise you go from scene to scene.
Right.
But here, it was important
To
to know
continue.
every single moment
Yeah.
of all her waking hours.
Right. Right. Yeah. Tanya, I have a question for you, which is that you had, in season 1, you had Rishi Mehta, and for season 2, you had Tanuj running the show. Is there a specific reason that you have been putting your trust in showrunners from abroad who also have Indian sensibilities? Is there something about that combination that works very well for you?
No, it's not as premeditated as it seems, but yes, I understand the source of the question.
Yeah.
I do think, and you know, Tanuj he answers this brilliantly, his take on India. I think there is an honesty that he brings in the way he depicted it. Similarly, you know, Richie, there was an authenticity which we had never seen. Maybe there is that distance actually adds to the narrative.
Right.
But you know, we have a lot of partners, SK Global, Film Caravan, etc. They are not Indian producers. So I think you know, that's how the journey began, but it isn't a sort of premeditated call.
Okay. All right. Tillotama. It's very few women get to play very few lead roles, and even fewer get to play the negative lead. So, what were your thoughts when you were offered this, and why? What was your thinking when you accepted it? Was the success of season 1 one of the things that made you accept this? And also, did Karishma give you any nightmares?
When Tanuj called me and told me about the show, the first thing was I was so happy for him. Because I mean, Delhi Crime's a great introduction, but I've seen his debut film, Punching at the Sun. And the drama's just begun for this man here. He's going to make a lot of things that a lot of us are going to watch and stand up and applaud. And so for me, it was a big thing for Tanuj to call me for this. And it also felt like a moment of adulting in our friendship, because we had done short films and, you know, where we play, you know, we wanted to do things that nobody would let us do. I was you know, Indian kids in New York at that time. I was studying there, and the world has changed a lot in these 20 years. And so it's really lovely. It was really lovely for me to 20 years later, you know, have this collaboration which started with such innocence and a sense of idealism about how we will tell the kind of stories and make space for people who look like us and talk like us. And to be able to do that on a platform like Netflix, with actors like, you know, Shefali and Rasika, it was quite special. And she never gave me any nightmares at all. Because I really did not focus on the crime that she commits. I really focused on her desires and her dreams. And that is perhaps a lot to do with the education that you know, my parents gave me, and my family. They're very liberal. They're very non-judgmental human beings. And the final underlining was my experience of teaching drama therapy at Rikers Island, where the line between those who are deemed guilty and those of us who are innocent became very blurry in those 2 years. So I think that became a preparation for life at large, to have the long game, you know, to look at things from a long perspective and not keep people in these boxes. So I think it was a combination of all these things. A long friendship, great family, and that made playing a really dark character quite joyous, if I have to say.
That's
I tried to lie about this. Yeah, it was really traumatic, you know. I mean, I had a hard time. My husband almost left me, but I actually had a great time. So, yeah.
Right. So at some level, I feel that DC2 explores the pressures on women in Indian society. You have Neeti Rasika, she's caught between doing her duty at work and doing her duty at home. Uh, there's Karishma, who never wanted to be a mother, but she's forced to be one. And Vartika has to become Madam Sir in order to navigate her professional responsibilities. So, isn't this kind of an unusual track for a crime thriller? I mean, normally we don't see these kind of social, women-centric messaging happening in a crime thriller. So what was the thinking behind that? I'd like all of you to answer it. Maybe start with Tanuj.
Oh, I mean, this was always in the DNA of this season from the beginning, from conception, and it's in the DNA of season one. You know, this is very much a feminist show on some, you know, on many levels, and I think it's partly, you know, a conscious effort to explore maybe the inner world of women that we don't always see. That's part of it, but you know, it's also just these are very strong actors and very strong characters that kind of transcend even the gendered exploration. You know, but personally, I've always loved working with actors. Yeah, I've always loved female narratives. You know, it's something that's always come very natural to me, and it's something that we just all kind of gravitated to. It's very lovely to hear you contextualize these things, because these are sometimes our subconscious energies as we direct, and it's nice to hear the voice put to it. Maybe Shefali could also add her perspective as Madam Sir.
Like Tanuj said, the soul of DC is not just that it's a crime thriller, but it's also making a social, I wouldn't say commentary, but it's raising social questions that burden our society and have been for the longest time. Also, yes, it's delving in deeper into each character's personal life. So what Niti is going through is what a lot of women go through. What Karishma has gone through, where she didn't want to get married or she didn't want to have a child, but she was forced to. That is something a lot of women go through. Madam Sir, she has a very supporting family, her husband particularly. He's from the force. She can do what she can do because of the strength she gets from home, but also Vartika is a kind of a woman who would have chosen to do it irrespective, you know. And she chooses to do both. But I think she does it so deftly because she has that option of choice. It's not forced upon her. And, you know, there was a lot of conversation. I don't know whether this is relevant to your question, but there was a lot of conversation of Madam Sir. You know, there were contradictory words.
What is the genesis of that? Is that what they use actually?
This is what they do. And I can say, I mean, there were a lot of people wanted to have a conversation about it. You know, that why Madam Sir? Why couldn't it just be Madam? It's so sexist, etc., etc. Honestly, I see it from Vartika's point of view, and I think she loves it. She gets it out of sheer love and respect from people. Even if not love, she gets it out of respect. And they don't know any better. And honestly, her attitude is, you can call me what you want to, just do the job. You know, let's just figure this one out. So, I mean, as Shefali, I love the term. I think it's so
brilliant.
endearing.
It's brilliant. Yeah.
And I've never heard it before.
Yeah.
So I just totally love it.
Right. Thanks.
You know, I think just like the show, right? The female-forward narrative of the show works at two levels. I think it works at a societal level, as well as it works from the point of view of women in the workplace. And I just think that the way, you know, the balance between crime and the female-forward narrative of the series is amazing. At the workplace, to have, you know, the person helming every case, every season as a woman in a male-dominated sort of environment is a very important sort of, you know, aspect to showcase. She has her subordinate, Neeti, who's looking up to her, who's trying to be strong, who's trying to juggle everything. So there is a role model who's actually seeming like she's got the balance going for whatever reasons, and Neeti is observing that and wanting to sort of emulate that in her life. At the same time, be as successful, as the person she sort of looks up to as a mentor. At a societal level, there is Bhupi's daughter who doesn't want to get married, and here we are challenging some really sort of traditional beliefs. And here's a man who's exposed, who's getting more exposed with every case that he works on with Madam Sir, and he's wanting to make a change, and then eventually he does. There's liberation there. There is Karishma's narrative, which leaves you that final monologue at the end, leaves you really thinking about what are we doing and what are we really sort of talking to women about. So it is a very conscious effort to have these characters sort of helm the female forward narrative for us through Delhi Crime and many other projects that we do.
Right. I'm going to ask you another question, which is about the Kacha Banyan gang. How come you selected this as the story, given that those crimes happened 3 decades ago, but it still seems like an unusual choice? Of course, in hindsight, it's an amazing choice. But when you were trying to select a story for season 2, how come you zeroed in on this one?
I will credit Richie and Tanuj with it, but I do understand their reasoning and we totally subscribe to it. I think it's a very relevant conversation. I think the safety of our senior citizens and more really delving deep into it, and the sort of opportunity it allows us to talk about the class divide and really what motivates this gang to commit crime, and for us to really get to the heart of the crime. And that's really what this is about. If season 1 was a certain ignorance or a sort of almost like not acknowledging that this is a heinous crime, this is full sort of understanding that this is as brutal and heinous a crime as it can be.
Yeah.
But I think the societal narrative that it navigates with personal desires and really what is too much is the question that the season begs. Tanuj, would you want to add?
Yeah, Tanuj, like...
Yeah, I can also, the urban legend of this gang, is another great tone to play with that hangs over the show. That really raises the stakes, as Tanya was talking about in the last session. The mythology of this gang, the collective fear this gang kind of created in the 90s. It was a great energy with which to set a story in the modern time, and the displacement of time ended up becoming something that worked in our favor, because the more we researched and when we took a hard stand that these crimes don't happen today in this way, it freed us up to kind of create new narratives and explore other crimes and graft them into this story, which ended up becoming kind of a pastiche of crimes that got to maybe a higher truth about crime in the city, a higher truth about what's happening in Delhi versus a specific case. And I think it's a beautiful achievement of the show. And so, it's a testament to how, stories can be a lot of things and can twist in a lot of ways. But the tone of the tone of these crimes, the kind of horrific crime scenes we see ends up becoming a kind of a very gripping energy.
Right. In fact, I was always getting the feeling while watching this that while Karishma and her cohorts are the villains of the piece, DC2 is saying that there is one more villain responsible for such crimes, and that is society. I think that, to me, that was a very big, perhaps subtle, but very big message. What do you have to say to that?
I think that was that kind of collective responsibility. I think Vartika coming at, facing off with Karishma at the end created a moment where she saw the case to the end, to its natural end. Her job was done, but she wasn't left with any answers, or the answers were too personal, or maybe too dark, too existential to kind of name in the moment. And that's a wonderful place to leave a crime show, and especially with the the police procedural coming under much more fire after global incidents, things like George Floyd. we got a chance to explore what a police procedural can be, and still getting a big win at the end, but maybe having to question the nature of not only the way the police, the methodologies are, but also what crime in a city like Delhi is, and what urban crime is, and how to move forward from these shocking cases. I really loved how we left it with a kind of an open darkness, and a question for everyone about what aspirations mean, and what are their own personal ways that aspiration affects them. Maybe they're not bashing heads like Karishma, but this sentiment, this feeling of seeing all this that you can't have, maybe, or that you have to take. These are very awesome themes to play with.
Right. Thanks. So I have another question for you, Shefali, which is that, you've said in the past that you were brought on board not just as an actor, but as a collaborator on Delhi Crime. So would you elaborate on that a little? What did that entail, and how was it different from being in the other shows and movies that you've done?
Well, I have to give credit that I've been lucky to work with sensitive, sensible directors who understand that filmmaking is not a solitary process. So it is a collaborative process. Not just the actor and director. I mean, you talk about the DOP, the sound, the music, the editing. Every spot dada and light dada contribute to making that scene work perfectly. And trust me, if one person is off, it can alter the entire dynamics. Yeah. Also, the projects I've worked on, Delhi Crime 1, Delhi Crime 2, Jalsa, Human, it's, everyone has a very unique voice when I say in the team itself. And that's the beauty of getting so many people, because then it's not just the writer or director's vision. It starts growing from there to become everyone's one universal vision. And the reason, that's what I think, that the reason you cast various actors is because they're going to bring something to the table.
Right.
You want to collaborate with them. You don't want them to mimic what you're doing or, say this verbatim, or do it exactly the way I see it.
Okay.
You want to see what they bring to the table. Yeah. Like if Tilly was playing Vartika, and if I was playing Karishma, we would bring something else to the table. And I think Tanuj would have a win-win irrespective, I guess.
You're pitching my next feature right now, by the way.
But I think you should ask this question to Tanuj, what they mean when they say collaborate.
Yeah. So Tanuj, let me ask you that question then.
Yeah, look, the word direct is almost like a misnomer sometimes. I like to coax, I like to guide. When you're working with someone like Shefali Shah, you're a fool if you don't enable her talent and allow her to lead and show you the character. And yes, there's times where you need to correct things, or you want to make sure you get a clean take. There's management of the process you have to do. But when you have why would you even bring Shefali Shah on board if you're not, not just collaborating, giving her the stage? She brings so much as a storyteller, as a writer, even to moments. There are things in there that were brilliant things that she's come up with that have become iconic in season 1 and season 2. Those are the magical moments you just try to find and shepherd. And maybe it's. That is good not directing is good directing at times. You have to know when not to give direction. You have to know when to trust your leads. And Shefali Shah is another writer on the project. She's bringing us through the case just as much as any other kind of behind the scenes creative. So that's how I like to work. I like my actors to show me their characters quite often. Anurag Jairaj is one of the best, right? His ad-libs are unbelievable. So much of the beautiful straw-sipping kind of storylines, if you watch his subtleties and his constant hunger. These are things that we come up with on set, that we figure on set, and it's a collaboration. You don't get that from just saying, here's the script, read it this way, you didn't read it the right way, put emphasis on this word. That's not you don't need me to do that, and you don't need actors like this for that kind of style. I love the organic nature of what we create. You know, that's what makes people lean in and watch. When you don't know what the actor's going to do, the audience doesn't know what the actor's going to do either, and it makes them stay engaged as a viewer.
Right. The next question is a slightly negative one, which is, start with Tanuj and then maybe to Tanya, which is that there has been one section of the audience that has been critical of Netflix for seemingly having mounted this show, the second season, for an international audience, given there were so many English dialogues. So how would you respond to that feedback?
Well, I think the way language works in this show is it's part of the theme. It's part of the class dynamic. I mean, there are certain conversations that happen in English in this show, as Delhiites do speak within their families from a certain class structure, and then there's dialogues that aren't. So a lot of that is in line with the themes of the show. In terms of audience, I think India has responded. This is the #1 show in India for 2 weeks straight, and who knows where else it's going. I think I'm getting nothing but notes from Indian viewers, Indian fans, kids in college who just watch this. They finish the series, they binge it, and they just have to reach out and tell me, I love this show, I love this series. So I'm not getting that from American viewers. I'm not getting that from international people. So I feel like this is an insecurity. It's a question that's coming from a personal insecurity, not necessarily from the reality of the response. I think India has very much voiced their opinion about the spectatorship is pretty clear where the core fans are. I mean, Tanya might have some insight into this more because they won't give me my little graphics.
I think one of the superpowers of all of us as Indians is how easily we can dip in and out of languages. We can just slide from like English to Hindi to, Gujarati or Punjabi or whichever language is our language at home perhaps. And I look at that police station or that universe of Delhi crime as a melting pot of many of these subcultures. I mean, it's fairly evident that like perhaps a lot of us, Vartika speaks English at home, but does that sort of stop her from communicating with somebody who's a criminal in Hindi? No, she slips into it very organically. So I'd actually anchor this to the authenticity of what we're trying to portray. How we're sort of trying to convey the reality of our characters as just core Indian characters, who are playing different roles in different situations. And at the heart of it, I mean, if you're watching Korean shows and Spanish shows and Japanese anime, and we know that, our members are loving that even in India, I think a little bit of multilingual mixing within the country is just sort of empowering storytelling, and that's really at the heart of it. Let's tell the most authentic story in the most sort of powerful way that we can tell it.
Right. In fact, I was personally quite chuffed that DC and DC2 are doing so well in other countries. I would have loved to know, which country it's getting the best response from and all that.
But India.
No,
our goal is to win in India.
No, India, of course, but after India.
We do very well. A lot of our series and Delhi Crime as well does very well in countries like the UK, UAE, Turkey, Canada, and there's a bunch of those. Right. But many, like for our films, like I was mentioning earlier, Gangubai and RRR, we know that Gangubai was perhaps the most watched title in Thailand. The princess of Thailand sort of dressed up as Gangubai and put out a post on Instagram. Yeah, and that's how something captures the zeitgeist. And similarly, Madam Sir as well, it transcends beyond India because they're just intrigued by the coinage. Right. So yes, many countries.
Okay. So we've run out of time. I've been told to wrap up. So I'm going to skip to, I had many questions, but I'm going to skip to the last one, which is that, and spoiler alert, in case you haven't watched it. Tanya saying no.
No spoilers.
Can I please? So, so we hear at the end of season 2 that Vartika is going to be transferred. So I'm just very curious. Give us a sneak peek. Does that mean that other cities are going to be added to the franchise? Is it going to be like Mumbai crime or Patna crime, or which is would be unbelievable to me? Would it be Delhi Crime 3 helmed by somebody else? Which can't
The
be.
latter, definitely not.
Yeah.
But like the ground rule of storytelling is never say never. So that's all I'll say. So the possibilities are endless.
Shefali was looking at you pointedly when you said that. So thank you very much, all of you. It was really wonderful for me to be here with you and get answers to my questions, and just sharing this space with some fabulous actors. And you know, I have to tell you that Netflix is always open on my laptop browser, and because of it, my reading habits have gone to hell.
You should use, I wanted to suggest that, on your Insta handle, the English slat, I think you should use Madam Sir as a good discussion point.
That's an interesting idea. So thank you very much. We've run out of time and there's no time for audience questions, so apologies for that. Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for these wonderful
Thank you.
people.
Thank you.
And for Tanuj, who's joining us from far away. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.